Okay, so just a few points I just saw the second on last week's pasuk of Mishlei 22:6. Chanach lanar al pidarko v'gam ki yazkin lo yasser mimena. Train the youth according to his way, and even when he grows old, he will not deviate from it. We're not going to dwell on this, but I saw one funny thing, which is we did the Meiri, who said that this is being sarcastic, that he's saying Meiri called it derech guzma. He says, that it's one of the commandments in Mishlei that is not true. Saying, oh yeah, go ahead, educate the youth according to his way, So I found a funny thing in the Shadal. Shadal says, on Chanach ironia, right? Which in Italian means irony. So that's another one of the meforshim to add to the list, acknowledging that this is a category of Mishlei interpretations or Mishlei pasukim. Okay, so he says it's ironic. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up, this just fascinated me. Okay, one of our questions that we asked is how young is this youth that we're talking about here? So I'm not going to reveal all the ideas we said, but what would you say based on on either what we said or your intuition?
I mean, I would say it depends on how young your mental capacity is.
Okay, fine. So a lot of the meforshim did take that approach that it depended on each one was dependent on the mental capacity.
I'd say teenager or young adult.
Yeah. Okay. So I found a specific thing. We're not doing this pasuk today. I'm just doing a few more points. The Yalkut Shimoni, okay, which is medieval midrashim on Mishlei. He was a machlokes, okay. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemiah, Chad Amar Mishitzar ad Esrin V'tartin. So one shita is from the 16 until 22. V'chad Amar Mitam Nisrei ad Esrin V'arba, from 18 till 24. Okay. Now two things really. Yeah.
That is also the same Aramaic lashon they use for when you should get married in the Gemara.
Interesting. Is it the same machlokes?
No, sorry, it's not for when you get married. Yeah.
No, because they say you should get married when you're 18.
Yeah, no.
Someone holds you to get married
when you listen to your. This might actually be exactly that. Actually.
Yeah. Okay. While you look that up, I just want to comment here is that two things that are astonishing to me. One is what kind of machlokes is that? I mean, that's a really, I don't know. It's like an oddly narrow group from 16 to 22 or from 18 to 24, right? Is it really that much difference between 22 and 24? 16 and 18, I could kind of see. And then the other thing that astonishes me is it's not younger. If anything, you would think that this pasuk was about a childhood education or early teenage years, but this is already young adulthood, especially back then when you would get married at a much younger age, So
I would love to take that focus out.
What was it?
I would love to take that.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, if I wanted to just spend a couple minutes on it. Any thoughts on
16 to 22?
16 to 22 or 18 to 24? And it's very hard here to not project our own norms back then. I don't know. It's hard to know what was normal back then. Yeah, would you find?
Oh, read the Gemara because it also brings in this pasuk.
Okay. Our pasuk?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Well, it starts out talking about when to get married.
Yeah.
And it says okay, the first thing before that was the most recent thing before us was the guy who got married at 14. He focused on time by doing that.
Yeah.
Amarle Rav Rabbi Natan bar Ami adirecha al savare dvarecha mishidasar ad esrim v'tarti. Amri la mitamni sari ad esrim.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So this is a machlokes to 9 then. So that's where they got it from. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you know what I want to do then? In that case, let's think about it outside of shiur, and I also want to look into that machlokes, and then we can come back to it at some other point. Okay. So Lamed Amud Aleph.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just type that now so I don't forget it. Here you go. Oh wow, this is taking forever. Give me 1 second. Low system resources may affect your audio quality. Isaac, let me know if my audio quality is affected.
Resources.
Right now, it sounds totally fine.
קידושין, Lamed Amud Aleph. Okay. All right, fine. Okay, so let's go to the new pasuk now. Okay, new pasuk. Oh, so slow. Okay, new pasuk. Ashir berashim yimshol ve'evid love leish malveh. Yeah, you want to translate?
A rich man or a wealthy
Yep,
man.
a rich man.
Uh,
You have to reverse it. Yimshol Barushin.
oh,
Moshel.
Moshe. I was thinking Marshall. Moshe.
Go, you can say it, David.
Rule,
Rule,
or
yeah, Barushin.
with poor people.
Rule over with poor people?
The be a Russian.
Yeah.
Is it-
Rule over poor people.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could learn it that way. That would shock me though. Also, I don't think you could work it out grammatically because Yimshol is singular, right? So he will.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, I was translating it in a way that didn't make sense grammatically in English because I thought the base was a question.
Right.
Like it was like weird, but then I realized that actually it does make sense, and then that was why I said that.
Got it. All right. The Eved Love Leish Malveh.
The servant.
will be lent. Will be
Love
borrowed.
it.
You have
A borrower
to
is a servant to a lender.
say again.
A borrower is a servant to a lender.
Borrow is a servant to the lender. Yeah. And
Ah,
yeah, so let me give you a tip here. I feel like this is a thing that when people are learning how to translate, that some people like just have an intuition for it and some people don't. People, when they translate, I think tend to get fixated on the order of the words. And I've so many people, and I'm saying this as a high school teacher, right? When I'm teaching high school students and they're learning how to translate, they will insist on just substituting word for word. And then they say it and it doesn't make sense, And what you really have to do is you have to maintain a certain flexibility in the ordering of the words, and then ask yourself, does it make sense? Like many times, like I'll like, again, this is very common because I used to do oral quizzes for everything, and this is something that they'd already prepared, and they'll say a sentence that semantically in English just doesn't make sense when they translate. They'll say like, and servant borrower to man lender. And I'll say, do you know how to speak English? So there's a certain, and I can only like describe it. Either it's an intuition that you get, and I'm lucky that I have that. Like I never had to struggle with this ever in learning Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever. But like if you don't have it, you have to allow yourself. Like if I had to describe it visually, any word you translate, like imagine it being like floating around in the air, and then you have to like be able to like rearrange them, free flowingly, but rearrange them into things that like semantically make sense, and especially in Mishlei, when it's very common for him to reverse the subject and predicate, like Ashir Barashim Yimshol, a wealthy. So again, what happens is you get like, if you take it literally, then you'll end up like having the same Havamina that Isaac did. A wealthy person in poor people he rule. That doesn't make any sense, right? So you keep it wealthy person, bam, bam, Rashim, bam, Yimshol, bam, and then you just let them float around, and then you snap them into place, and then like magnets, they'll just like, that's what happens. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let me just. And a borrower is a servant to a man who is a lender. And I know people use the words creditor and debtor. For the life of me, I can never remember which one's which. Like creditor, debtor is the one that confuses me. Debtor, it means you're in debt or you put someone else in debt. I can't like terminator is someone who terminates someone else. Debtor is someone who so I'm going to say lender and borrower. Yeah, we're gonna.
I just looked up debtor.
Yeah,
it actually is the person. It's the lovet.
It's the lovet, right? It's the person who's in debt, right?
I totally thought it was the other one.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah.
Does this make semantic sense in Hebrew or?
Well, in Hebrew, you can do this. You can do the subject and predicate, or the predicate and subject.
What's going on with this pasuk?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Okay, so
let's
let's
think of Shemitah though, the second half.
uh
What we're talking about was like it goes back to the Malva can't like go and like part of the issue go and try to collect it because like, he has like holding over the lobe and whatever.
right. Okay, so you go. It looks like, well, that's strange. He connects it to the previous pasuk of Achan Darko. That's strange.
It's hard.
Okay, well, let's see what he says. And just as ukamosh mishtalet ha'ashir al ha'aniyim, so what does mishtalet mean?
I don't know.
So it's hispa'el, right? So it's reflexive. And just as the wealthy person makes himself rule over the poor, okay, mishtalet, kach roi. Oh, maybe the kamo is not going on the previous one.
Right.
It's ukamo kach, yeah. So we should start off as just as the wealthy person makes himself rule over the poor people, kach, so too, roi shehe halove ke'eved lemalve.
It is proper for the borrower to be like a servant to the lender.
Yeah.
I love this pasuk.
You love your projections. Yeah. All right. Targum, I think, is just a straight up translation. Atira, which is a rich person. The miskene, the miskene are poor people. Nishtalet will rule over. Va'avda, Yosef, and a borrower is an eved legavra mosfana. That's straight translation, so we don't need to look at that. Okay, Targum, not Targum. Well, Targum, but not Targum. Art Scroll Targum says a rich man dominates paupers. Interesting. Dominate is an interesting word, right? Because motion could be rule or like rule like in an official capacity or just like to dominate.
Yeah.
A rich man dominates paupers, and a debtor is a servant to the creditor. Stop it. All right. Living Nach says the rich man rules over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Okay, that's pretty much similar to us. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the man who lends. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So these are good. All right. So yeah.
Ask the side one, not necessarily a question.
Sure.
How is this possible when you read him?
Yeah.
Is he like telling us like what is like a proper way to set things up? It says so too it is proper for.
That's what it sounds like, right? Right. So there is another. Okay. Well, there's another translation to proper. Like you could say like befitting, like not like you should do this, but makes sense, you know. Or like it's like a norm, not normative. Yeah. All right. So what are the questions? You had a question.
Yeah, like what's the message?
Yeah.
It's like just stating facts.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of what you were saying, right? I mean, it's this question on the pasuk itself, right? Is like, okay. First of all, let's just ask it like this: is this pasuk prescriptive or descriptive?
What's prescriptive?
Prescriptive means what you should do. Descriptive means what is. Okay, and then either way, what is the practical idea? Right? Meaning, if it's prescriptive, then that will tell you the practical idea. But if it's descriptive, then we need to like figure out a practical application on our own.
And is this referring to money, happiness?
Yeah. Okay. So let's assume this is definitely referring to money, but the question is, can you extend it? Granted that this is referring to money. Okay. Is this referring to rich and poor in other senses? Yeah, Ali?
Besides being connected both like with financial ideas,
yeah.
What is the connection between the two? I know you should do that later.
Yeah,
but, like,
no, that's good. So what is the relationship between the two halves? Okay, and I'm just going to acknowledge here, according to Pshat and Sadigon. I saw Chaim first. Yeah.
It's not like sorry, I'll put this hand also. But yeah, is this I guess to put it in, I think Meiri terms, is this a derech nistar or derech nidla pasuk? And if it is derech nistar, then what is ashir and Russian mean?
Okay, so let me put this. I'll just acknowledge the same question in the Meiri terms. In the what would the derech nistar application be?
Yeah.
What?
Because I mean, it just seems to me like the first half of the pasuk seems to be talking derech nistar. I don't know. That was the first thing I got.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely get an intuition also, but I'm not ready to abandon the literal meaning yet. Yeah, Ariel and then David. Oh, David. Okay.
He's first, and then I'm second.
All right.
Is this really true?
Yeah.
As far as I mean, even my own understanding, there are plenty of ways that like the rich person is dependent on poor people in many, many ways.
Or not all rich people are bad people. I mean, if you want to say that, yeah, a ruler over someone. I mean, that's if you want to say a ruler is bad.
Yeah. I don't know.
Why are you saying it's bad?
Yeah.
Fine.
It was
Oh,
done.
so ask that one. Sorry, you had a question. What do you say? Say a question.
Yeah. So if this is descriptive, I'm adding this into the first question. If this is descriptive, is it true? Right?
Yeah.
That's a question. Okay.
Yeah.
And then if it, I'm just going to spell this out because I'm already here. If it is prescriptive, then why? Right? Yeah. Yeah.
The other question is, what does it mean that the borrower is a servant to the lender?
Yeah. In what sense? I'm going to ask that for both sides. In what sense does the Ashir rule over the Russian? And in what sense is the Love a servant to the Malve? Yeah. I mean, I think plain shot. I mean, your question is good, David, but like plain shot. If you're going to say who's dependent on who, it's the borrower who's dependent on the lender, right? Because he owes him stuff, right? You're taking it further, saying that that sometimes is the other way around, like yeah.
Wait, could we go to that last question we just wrote?
Can we?
Remember? Okay, yeah. Okay, that was my question.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like that's basically.
Who's the audience, right? Are you talking to the poor person and the lender, or the borrower, or are you talking to the rich person and the?
Don't be
Or
poor.
someone else.
Yeah.
Someone says setting up a society or something.
Yeah.
What is rich and what is poor?
Yeah, we said that already. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rich or the lender, or the poor or the borrower, or someone else. Yeah, I think these are the questions.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know what's with this mad grinning and excitement and.
I think it's time for a wild shot.
Oh no! Can we just get plain shot first?
You also want to do a more definition.
I can say the
Is there? Are we missing a definition question?
Oh, I mean, I'm just thinking as far as maybe we kind of hit on this in 4 with like control. I guess in what sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so never mind.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other question is, rich and poor / lender and borrower. Another sense. See, here's let me just steer us away from like rich and poor in another sense for a second. Rich and poor definitely can mean other things. It could be like smeach b'chalko. It could be like rich in chachma. But once you go into lender and borrower, it becomes very hard to say that this is not literal.
Yeah, that's why I said on the first part.
Yeah,
the first half of the pasuk was giving me that like definition.
Yeah, so that's why like definitely there is a pshat in the literal sense. Let's just try to figure that one out first. I'm fine with radical pshat as long as it's with the literal.
I think it's within the line.
Okay.
Although I will have to make a liberty. I will have to take one liberty here.
Okay.
Because the pasuk doesn't give us like exactly like what like what's the consequence or like what the mentality should be or whatever. I'm gonna make a move.
I'm so excited to hear this.
Here's the move.
Yeah.
Okay, the move is I think the pasuk is coming to show you like the psychology of like a lender, a rich person and a poor person.
Okay.
All right, and also borrower. And lender.
Yeah.
So now that you say that, I mean, now you have to like whenever like there's a rich and there's a poor person, like naturally, psychologically, by default, not a non-perfected person will seem like he's like above him, and like oh, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And so too with the lender, like I'm lending you money, like you need me to survive.
Yeah, right.
So I think maybe that like if that can be an approach to like figure out the process.
So you know what's interesting about that? You want to add to
I was
that?
just saying, in the same sense, you could say the same thing about the poor person or the lender, or the borrower is also not at a level where he's going to see the people, he like the poor person's going to see the rich person as like ruling over him.
Yeah.
And the borrower's going to relate to the lender as like someone who's ruling over him also.
Yeah, right. I think so. Yeah.
A different.
Okay. So just to bring a raya to what you're saying, that sounds like the way that the Meiri took the last pasuk, that it was making a statement that's not true. right? Meaning that with Hierarchical, same thing here. It's not true that a rich person rules over a poor person, but psychologically it might feel that way. And and similarly, the borrower is not a slave to the lender. See, now I can't even use the normal terms, I'm getting mixed up. But so if we take that approach, so then what would the practical idea be?
Just to finish the thought a bit, a borrower is not a servant to a man who's a lender. Yeah, he owes him, but that doesn't, because the borrower can also feel like, oh, he's indebted to him, more than he needs to be. Yeah, there is a psychological component to that. So the practical, you asked
what's the practical? Yeah, and who's the audience?
The audience, I think the audience could be a borrower and the lender.
Okay.
Because the borrower should recognize, just because he borrowed money from someone doesn't mean he owes the world to him. It's just pay the debt back and that's it.
Right. It's like it's a utility thing. Right.
Yeah. The practical application is just check your ego.
Well, check your ego will also check it's not really checking of an ego for the borrower, right? I mean, the borrower just has to, I guess, recognize the reality that he's not, he's not deserving to.
Right. I wouldn't say it's a check your ego thing, but I do think it is an ego thing, because what's the mistake is that you're defining your relationship in terms of power or in terms of identity. Right, like the yimshul is that he's ruling over me. He's a ruler, I'm a subject, or I'm an eved and he's a master. And in reality, it's not like that. This should not define your entire existence.
Right. Think of it this way: if a borrower has that mentality to someone who loaned him money, he's probably gonna have the same mentality when he's lending money.
Right, he's gonna feel like he's a master. Right.
Projecting money.
Yeah. Right. It's just a different side of the coin.
Yeah. A normal borrower is like, all right, you lend me money, so what? I don't have to mow your lawn. Are you gonna home it then?
Yeah, right. And the feelings of inferiority, that I'm somehow inferior because I'm I'm depending on your money. That's ridiculous. I mean, what it reminds me of is does this remind you of any pasuk that we've done recently?
Well, I was going to say something from the last pasuk. But...
On the last pasuk, okay. Hold that thought for 1 second. I think we did this recently.
I have another question. Once we're done talking about this.
That's the reality, right? A rich man and a poor man meet, Hashem makes them both. The reality is that there's no intrinsic differences between you and a poor person. It's just you happen to have money and he doesn't. And if there's a borrower and a lending relationship, then that happens to be the thing. But you shouldn't feel that you are intrinsically different. And that could lead to mistakes on both sides, right? In other words, that like you said, this is not like you said, this is what I thought you were going to say, is that if a poor person feels inferior or like he's being ruled over by the rich, that's going to close off certain avenues of thought or decision making or what's possible, or it's going to cause him to elevate the rich person beyond what's real. Like you look at the way that average people view celebrities. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And almost like they're superhuman beings, or their lives are magically happy. It's not your status as a human being doesn't change based on your socioeconomic level or your socioeconomic relationships. I think that's one shot idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question.
And then David has
when we say that the Lovet is an Eved to Malva.
Yeah.
So this is kind of about, it's kind of the same as question 4, but it's more in depth.
Yeah.
So is the Lovet actually serving the Malva in some way, or is it just he feels like an Eved?
I think he feels like an Eved. I think he feels like an Eved.
Yeah. Okay. I'd say a follow-up question in if he actually is serving him, then that does bring in the question about just in terms of halacha, it's actually also, as a form of ribis.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So I'm saying then that that's another dimension to it that that I think we might need to be addressed.
Okay.
That could kind of shed light on the Hala, meaning I guess we didn't really ask what the Halloween is, but it seems like
Yeah, we
this
should
is
ask
the
that.
Halloween, I guess. Like really, like this is what people think.
Yeah.
And then I guess like laws of Ribis would come,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of counteract these like natural tendencies that the borrower lends money to the guy. Sorry, he gets money from the guy, and now he like feels this like gratitude. He feels like he's subservient to the man. And now he's gonna go and do all these things, whatever. And like, halachas, like don't do
Yeah,
these things.
could be. I think the reason why I'm not inclined towards that is that would only be in the second half, and I feel like that it'd be weird if that was like the thrust of the pasuk, and the first half is.
Unless the rich and the lender are the same person.
Yeah, you could say that you could
in
learn the
the
pasuk that way. You could say it's the same person. Yeah. Yeah, David.
Okay, there's another thought on that also.
Yeah.
From the last pasuk, maybe I'm taking the last pasuk too broad.
Yeah.
But as far as in teaching your son about like how to relate to these things,
Yeah.
right, where so like you might have like that predisposition to then feel like he's subservient or like that type of psychological how he's feeling.
Yeah.
And to show your son that even if this is the way that one may naturally feel, that is not necessarily true.
Right. That's interesting. I'm going to call that's a kind of like that's what I would call like a Rabbeinu Yonah association of the psukim.
Okay.
That he'll Rabbeinu Yonah will sometimes take like the subject matter of the pasuk of the previous pasuk and then like extend it. How do I describe it? Say we say one more time.
Okay, that to teach that within this pasuk coming off the heels from last pasuk of
Off the heels.
Yeah.
Of teaching him that he may that your son may have a predisposition toward feeling this type of subservience or things like that. You should teach him that is not really true, and you should teach him to then relate to this type of situation.
Right.
In a more healthy manner.
Right. So this is like a possible application of the derech in the previous pasuk. Yeah.
Okay, that's aside from my other.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I have a different read.
You sure?
So do I know. So I
Okay.
said there to read now. I don't know if you want.
Sure.
Actually, I have an example of this read that I want to give, and I realize that this is treading on your territory. So like you're the real estate guy, okay? But I'm gonna say this like as an Amar. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'll correct you.
Okay. So in my parents' day, it was like, first of all, like everyone bought a house, right? And it was like much easier to buy a house, in most places. And like, it was conventional wisdom, like, oh, you need to like invest in real estate personally, and like, I've heard that, I've heard cases of people who are like my age and younger, where like they tell their parents that they're renting, and their parents are like, that's stupid. Like you want to be dependent on all your life, and the parents are only saying it from like a psychological standpoint, where like if you do the math and you see, well, what's actually going to be a better use of my money? So maybe renting makes more sense, like maybe like you're going to be saddling yourself with more, either more costs or like more commitments or whatever, But the point is that they're not evaluating they're just taking the snapshot of the renter and landlord. We call them a landlord, like Moshe, and they're saying, well, this is subservient to that, bad. Like, as opposed to, no, analyze the actual, facts of the deal and see, like, does this actually make more sense or not? Don't like, just get this hierarchies out of your mind and like this status of like being, yeah.
Well, I mean, in terms of purely like equity, like it does make more sense to buy.
Okay.
But again, like that, it doesn't
mean it makes sense for every person to buy.
Well, that's just
right.
Like if I want to live in this community, like I'm not buying it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
But
No,
like,
but that was
vacuum, like,
right.
It does make financial
right.
more sense.
Yeah, like that was the example I was thinking of like it's okay, whatever. All right. Yeah. So you have a new approach. Go ahead.
And the pasuk being in this read addressed to someone who's outside of the ashir, the lower, the malva.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, where if he sees, it's talking about him dealing with either of them, but I think particularly the one who's on the down of that he should understand while dealing with this person that they are in some sense subservient to this other person through that money subservience. Right. And then from that, either two ways you can go. of one, not expecting this guy's going to be able to do things outside, and not expecting this guy's going to be able to act freely in a way that will be able to be beneficial in their relationship. Recognize that other guy, the guy who's on the down here, is going to have to do things subservient to whatever the ashir or the malva's will is. That's one thing he can do. Or other thing once he notices that this person is subservient is to try to in some way break him free from the
shackles.
Shackles, like the bond. I don't know if that's the right word. The shackles. From the shackles of the bond that he has, keeping him stuck to the ashir or the malva.
Right. So this is like a mistake when you're interacting with someone that you project your own freedom onto them when they're in a situation of dependency. You know, I don't know why this is the first example that comes to mind. Oh, I know why, because I was learning Rus. That we had a discussion a long time ago about like if Elimelech, left Israel and that was wrong, why didn't Naomi just like break away? And my argument was like, especially then, even now, especially then, you can't just say like, oh, she should just leave her husband. Like there is a relationship of dependency there, especially if she can't make her own living and stuff. And so it's very easy to like make that mistake of you're just putting yourself in that position, saying, well, you're taking your own position, saying, well, I would do this. Yeah, but you're not in that position of dependency, and you have to factor that in when you're dealing with the dependent people. Yeah. Yes.
So it seems like if I would have to say, like, it seems descriptive to a certain degree. Yeah. But with like some sort of prescriptive implication. Yeah. And I'd say if I had to say there was an audience, it would be like the poor person or the borrower. Yeah. In that not necessarily the rich man has will rule over them to a certain degree, but that they have like a high ground that the poor person or the lender shouldn't necessarily try taking advantage of people who have this high ground over them. So like not to necessarily say that it's not saying that the rich person should take advantage of the poor person, but it's saying the poor person should not get too comfortable using the rich person for whatever reason.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. So that is saying that there is a trap. Okay, so hold on a second. I see that in the case of the borrower, because the borrower is getting money from the rich guy, right? I don't see that in the poor person being ruled over by the rich guy. Can you give me an example of that?
Right. So like if a poor person is constantly asking a rich man for money, or
so it's just another form of dependency. I see.
Or getting needy or something like that. He has to keep in mind that the rich person, in the end of the day, does have this advantage over him.
Right.
He shouldn't
take advantage of that, right? Like, I see what you're saying. Okay, that's a different approach. Hold on a second. I wasn't realizing we were going to another approach. So let me just restate what you were saying, and then so David was saying that that this is addressing an outsider, saying that when the outsider interacts with, I can see why you went with a poor person, but I think it could also apply to the rich person, that you have to take into account the dependencies involved in the relationship and not naively assume that they can just act freely.
Question on that. So borrower lender, I understand that you can have like a third party. Yeah. Rich man, poor man, is that like an outsider coming into the city? Is that someone living? Because I'm assuming someone who's living in the city, unless you're gonna say it's like a third category of like a Beinonis in like the city. I guess like someone who doesn't lend or who doesn't give to other people, but also doesn't take from other people. Like, is that the category of person who's talking to the one side or the other in the first half pasuk?
I was thinking about more simply to say like a boss and like a worker. Yeah.
So there is no third party in the first half?
No, there is.
It's always addressed to.
It's addressed to the third party. Yeah.
So whether you're watching like a boss and a worker, or watching mom and a worker.
I mean, look, if you talk to a Nar and his parent, like that's also a relationship of dependency and subordination, and you can't just advise that person or interact with them as if they're in a vacuum, because they're not. Yeah. You add to that? Yeah.
Well, no.
Oh, to Ellie?
Add to his thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
No, to Ellie's thing.
Oh, to Ellie's thing. Okay, fine. Sorry. So that's put a bow on that. Is that good? Okay. So then Ellie's thing. Now to restate this. So this is talking about. This is advice to the people in the lower rung who are dependent on the people in the upper thing, and saying, and it's reminding them, you got to remember you are the Eved. In the sense that you are like relying on this on this person. I'll give you a weird example. Like you see stories about people who like who just like get into credit card debt, right? Mm-hmm. And like they have credit and like they buy all this expensive stuff and they forget about the fact that they actually are dependent on people who they're borrowing from, and then they get into trouble because of that, or people who are relying on handouts of some sort from someone who is like supplying it and forgetting that this is not something that they could take for granted. And like that person, like I'll give you an example of this is that I don't know if this is a good example, but I've heard that it's a big issue in certain Jewish communities where like, Jewish education is very expensive. And like what ends up happening is like the school provides like tuition assistance, but really is supplied by the people who can pay full tuition. And if that balance gets shifted enough, and the tuition keeps on getting raised, so then all the people who can afford the tuition are going to pull out. And then the people who were like relying on that will not have that benefit anymore, So it's reminding them. So it's interesting. So there's a certain fantasy of the poor person where even though he factually is dependent on the rich person, he forgets that it's not, that it's not really his. And then that can set himself up for bad decisions.
Or that he forgets it, or he thinks that the rich man's always going to be there also.
Yeah, right. The rich man is always going to be there, or the rich man owes it to him. Right. Yeah.
And then,
I have a different approach. That's the opposite.
Hold on a second. So Ariel wanted to add something to Ellie's thing.
Yeah, I want to, amplify what he's saying, maybe even a second version of what he's saying. Mm-hmm. So I think that what he was saying for the second half of the pasuk, where you're always going to be dependent on the lender. But I think maybe in the first half of the pasuk, maybe you could say a little different, where and this is like a sarcastic way. Yeah. Reading like a rich man will rule over poor people. No, that's not true, because just because you're poor doesn't mean you can't be rich. Right. Have that rich mentality. Don't think that just because you're poor, you're going to be poor for the rest of your life, and you're going to have to rely on other people. You can break out of that cycle. Right. Okay. See, I think that is a different interpretation. It's a good one though, and that fits in with a lot of the genre of Mishlei's talking about how poverty and wealth are not like intrinsic states. Right. But the second half of the I think is still like you said. What I was saying. So. Yeah. Isaac, what were you saying?
Yeah. So it's actually I think the opposite of Ellie's idea, but I think they're actually complementary. Okay. Okay, so I think his idea is just someone who is like, emotionally unaware of this relationship. Mm-hmm. But I think you also have the opposite phenomenon where someone is very aware of their dependency on this other person. Mm-hmm. And so I'd say it's contrasting the two halves of the pasuk that the rush actually is dependent on the usher in a lasting way, where he needs to be constantly appeasing the usher in order to maintain in order to sustain himself, because that way he continues to get money from the usher. Yeah. Whereas the love, in a certain sense, he's getting something from the malva because he's borrowing money from him. Mm-hmm. But like there's this phenomenon where a borrower will feel like excessively indebted to the lender because the lender like helped him get back on his feet, but like the lender didn't actually the lender is getting his money back. He didn't, and so there's the phenomenon of people making themselves into an eved to the malva. Whereas, it's really not the same as in reality, it's not the same as the rush.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's an interesting observation about there's a more temporary nature intrinsically to the malva-lova relationship. It's just like a temporary fix, whereas the rush and the ashir is going to be more long term. I also am realizing, by the way, that it's interesting that the chiddush of the first half is framed in terms of the wealthy person, and the second half is framed in terms of the poor person. In other words, the first half is saying, hey, by the way, the rich person is the ruler. Second half is saying, hey, by the way, the borrower is the servant. I don't know if that matters. I want to add one more thing to what Eli was saying that I like, and this is perhaps an opening to the Derech Nister, is that, and I'm sure someone's going to say this, I bet it would be Rashi, but I don't know, that I know we do talk about our own possession of money in terms of we're just borrowing from God, like that the money is not actually ours because you don't actually own money. Like there's nothing that gives you permanence over the money. So I'm wondering if that remember it, because this is a mistake people make also when they're especially Bnei Israel in the midbar, but even nowadays, people thinking that they are the ones who are the source of their wealth, as opposed to really just utilizing wealth that is given to them by God. Shemitah, right? Yeah.
When you asked for an example in the first half, I was thinking that when the poor person relates to the rich person as the benefactor, then he forgets about God as being the ultimate benefactor.
That's also true, right?
He's being just completely, reliant on the rich man. That's how we
Yeah, correct. Okay, good. So let's just summarize what we have here. So we have Ariel's approach of it's stating a psychological reality which is not reflective of the true reality. You might feel like an Eved or feel like the rich person is the ruler, but that's not really true. It's just the circumstances in your wealth, and the real reality is God makes the rich and the poor. There's no intrinsic statuses that are different, and you can't let that affect your decision making. We have David's idea of of when you're addressing someone who is in a limited dependent relationship, then you have to factor that into account. I like the idea. I think the only reason I'm not inclined towards it here is I do feel like this should be either addressing the rich person or the poor person or both. Addressing a third party interacting with them seems to be like a less intuitive way to say it to me, but that's an intuition thing. And then we have Eli's idea that this is talking about, it's reminding the poor person that the rich guy is his ruler in a sense, and the borrower, reminding the borrower that that he is an Eved to the Malva in a certain sense. Those are the three major approaches. Okay, all right, so let's tomorrow do a meforshim. Yeah. Ooh, okay. All right, see ya. Have a good day.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give you a hint.